Hello, and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown, and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Peter.
So, April in the garden.
Isn't it glorious? It has been.
It's been amazing, Chris. I've never had a birthday with a barbecue at the end of March before. It's the first time I've sat outside for my birthday.
That's great. That's really good to hear.
Equally, we've had some big winds, didn't we, at the beginning of the month? And
Those three storms caused a lot of problems for a lot of people, so not good. But yes, March has turned out to be obviously a very mild, a very dry month as well. The lack of rain is probably a bit concerning for a lot of us out there. Certainly, I noticed a lot of my pots have needed some extra watering already. And yes, and obviously it's going to continue, if not getting worse as we get into high temperatures.
Well, yeah, that's it. And obviously the water butts are getting drained already, which is not a good thing, is it? But hopefully we'll get some rain soon and that'll green everything up again. So what's in the news this month then, Chris?
There's quite a lot going on, obviously. It's busy in the garden scene as far as the RHS shows. Malvern is back this month.
Brilliant.
After having 2 years of absence due to the virus. Obviously, Three Counties Showground. I went there many years ago, perhaps when it first started, to be honest with you. I haven't been back since, but it's a wonderful showground, obviously set in the Malvern Hills.
Yep.
Obviously, and it's been promoted as a 4-day event, and I believe that good old Monty Don is going to be making a guest appearance, so that should be good. And I think the whole themes, with this year's shows is going to be obviously Queen's Platinum Jubilee, so there's going to be lots of references to that too. But it's just good to be back, and it's probably worth just mentioning, Pete, isn't it, just to keep an eye out on these dates for local shows, which are now being resurrected, thank goodness, and obviously the RHS shows as we look forward to the rest of the summer.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? I've never been to the Malvern show, but I hadn't realised quite what a massive show it was. I mean, it's and so garden orientated, isn't it? It
is, yeah. Some really good exhibitors there, and a lot of the people who go off to the Chelsea Flower Show. This is their dress rehearsal, if you like. They want to get it right, and of course, a lot of plants have to be held back for the show, and obviously have to be moved forward to sort of cheat the season. I suspect with the weather as it's been through the month of March, it's going to be quite interesting to see what is in flower and is looking good. I also noticed they've got the usual obviously exhibitors there, but they've got a Gardener's Question Time, which obviously is popular at these sort of events too.
Excellent. And I see Wales is thinking of eradicating or trying to eradicate the Rhododendron Ponticom, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's the one which really does sort of take over. And rhododendrons are obviously they're not of this country. They're sort of native of the Himalayas of China. But of course, the conditions in North Wales, as in Scotland, as in the Lake District, are perfect for them to grow really well, and they are beautiful.
Honestly, I think I appreciate they are very invasive, and once you've got one, they sort of spread and they spread and they spread. But they do look lovely when they're in flower, and obviously for the bees and insects, they form a nice source of food. And if memory serves me correctly, I think there's some rhododendrons in Turkey. I think they're ponticoms that make a mad honey, which is
what's that?
It's a honey that the Turks have been having for many, many years that makes you sort of lightheaded and slightly sort of out of it, I think is the best way to describe it. I'm not entirely sure. I've never had it myself, but I have heard about it. Yeah, so is Ponticum a variety that only grows in acidic or ericaceous conditions?
It is. It's a true ericaceous plant, and the thing is, it does seem to colonise sort of soil which is quite thin. So hence that's why it tends to be in the more mountainous areas. Okay. And of course, as the little news story got from Garden News here, they were saying that each plant can shed up to 1 million seeds a year. There is the problem. It moves around very easily. And anecdotally, I remember many years ago, local parks cutting these plants back, and then within 4 or 5 years, them being basically replaced by young seedlings, which obviously want to grow. So quite difficult as far as the management on these hillsides. And obviously I can see the issues it could cause, but it's a shame for the wildlife if they're lost in big numbers.
But then I suppose the other side of that coin is always if the rhododendrons aren't there, hopefully new shrubs and new trees will move in, and that will provide the wildlife with some more natural food sources.
New opportunities, I think.
It.
Yeah, indeed. But no, I think the suggestion in the article was that gardeners are perhaps being advised to swap Rhododendron Ponticom, if they ever grew it in the garden, which I suspect not, with more named varieties. Of course, at the Garden Centre here, we tend to sell the Inkarho rhododendrons, which are grafted varieties which grow on limey soils. So,
don't they grow anywhere?
Well, they'll grow anywhere, but because our soils in this area is quite limey, they grow particularly well. So, yes, it has the best. But you can grow them in pots. You can grow them absolutely everywhere, and that's why they've become incredibly popular now. They've been around for about 20 years. They were found on a very limey quarry. Just growing where they shouldn't have grown, and the wonderful researchers and the breeders in Germany then developed them as a rootstock to all the popular varieties we grow now. So good news, and they should be in the garden centre through the month of April and May. So watch out for those if you want to grow a rhododendron in your garden, in your soil.
Yeah, because I think personally, I love rhododendrons. They're nice and glossy black, sort of dark green leaves, and the flowers they seem to go on for a long time. I mean,
they're stunning. They are really stunning,
and loads of different colours as well, which is just fantastic, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, a good plant to consider, and obviously very easy to grow. Really, yeah.
That's it. And one that made me laugh: slugs and snails.
Yes,
they're no longer regarded as a pest.
I know. I did
when they eat all your lettuces. No, they're not a pest. They're fine.
We are in the month of April, and we were aware that sometimes stories can be not quite as they seem. But this one is very much true, and it's the RHS have basically reclassified. So they're taking out the classification of a problem as an opportunity to obviously mop up a lot of your other pests in the garden. So in a way, nature's sort of turned on its head a little bit, which is good. But I suppose, Peter, at the end of the day, there's so little out there as far as armoury to control slugs and snails. I suppose it only seems right. And of course, our bird populations are going to obviously benefit from the fact that we're not using those nasty pellets these days as they've been withdrawn.
Yeah, definitely. And I always remember as a child watching thrushes thrashing snails about on the paving slabs and getting their breakfast. I haven't seen a thrush for a while now. I don't think they're quite as common as they were 20, 30 years ago, or even 40 years ago. But I think that's it. And if we can feed the wildlife with smaller animals down the food chain, I guess that's no bad thing, is it?
No, not at all. I think it's quite a good thing. And anyway, we use obviously our armoury for slugs and snails where we can control, or contain them out of the problem. So I'm a great advocate of using obviously things like copper tape, and I know anecdotally people use things like pub traps.
The beer traps. I've got a couple of beer traps down on the allotment, and coffee grounds. There's obviously. Yes. Here at the Garden Centre, if you're a local customer to us, by all means bring a bag and ask if you're stopping for a cup of tea or coffee in the restaurant, ask them for some coffee grounds and they'll happily give you some. If you're not making fresh coffee at home, we've got quite a few kilos of coffee we go through each day, so it's a good source of coffee grounds. And then holly leaves, another one that they don't like, aren't they?
Indeed, anything which is going to slow their move. And any mulches, actually, you're using a nice bark mulch at this time of the year is good, that slows them down. But remember, of course, if you've got using coffee grounds, be careful. But if you want to grow lovely Pyrrhus and camellias, of course, you can use a few coffee grounds around the base of those plants because they actually prefer the acidity they produce. So, but use them sparingly in the garden. I think that's the key.
And safety first. I know as a boy, my parents, I can remember telling me off for pulling the flowers off foxgloves, which are obviously not very good as a child to be playing with such a poisonous plant. No. But the HTA are now pushing forwards a new sort of scheme, aren't they?
Yeah, so what they've done, this report has always been around, actually, but they've updated it. So they work with the Veterinary Poisons Information Service. So basically it means that the information you get at the garden centre when you come to buy your plants is put on the labels of the pots. So this information really covers, obviously, for us humans. However, they've sort of extended it now to include, obviously, our domestic pets. Cats and dogs. So I think it's really good, and I think it's obviously long overdue. And of course, because as more people are buying pets and such like over the lockdown, I suppose it's even more important that we know what plants we're putting into our gardens too. So
yeah, because I mean, obviously alliums are a classic one, but my experience of having had dogs most of my life is that generally pets don't actually go for things that are that nasty to them. However, there are always occasions when they do. So I think it's a really good idea. And if we can protect our pets and our neighbours' pets, then why not?
Yeah, and I think it's mainly, isn't it? It's young kittens, and certainly puppies can be quite inquisitive, and they will probably have a nibble at things. But I mean, there's one plant which it would be on the list, is a plant called cherry pie, a heliotrope. Right. Which is a plant I grow in my garden, and I didn't realise it was very, very toxic to dogs until I read a story in America on social media, literally about 3 years ago, and a dog literally just chewed half a plant and died very, very quickly. But this plant, for us humans, as the name suggests, cherry pie, it has a wonderful fragrance. Smell of cherry pie. So you can understand there's a bit of a crossover here of plants which are attracted to us humans because of the smell. And of course, the downside is, of course, they can be very toxic to our dogs. So I think if you're an animal owner, it might be worth going onto their website and having a little look through and just make sure that you haven't got those sort of plants which might cause problems, especially if you've got a young animal.
And I see Morecambe's back in the news again. Morecambe's a lovely seaside town, isn't it, Chris? I mean, I've cycled there from Lancaster and spent quite a few afternoons on mud flats or beach, or I don't know what you call it, the sandless beach.
Yes, it's a little bit like Southport, just a bit further south. It does look like a little bit of a golden sands, doesn't it? Which perhaps Blackpool has.
But then so they're going to build a new Eden project up there, which I went around Happy Mount Park, and there's quite it's a nice town, to be fair to it, and I think anything that can draw even more people there, and possibly not the type that go to the likes of Blackpool, just a little way up the coast, make it a point of difference, won't it? So.
I think so, and I think in its heyday in the Victorian period, it was an incredibly popular, go-to destination for. Certainly up in the north, it was the Whit weeks, wasn't it, when all the factories used to close, and that's when they used to have this massive migration to likes of Blackpool and Morecambe. But I think, putting the Eden project there, 2024, so a couple of years' time, it's had planning permission now, so it's all set to go. Brilliant. And bringing this 12-acre wildlife meadow is a really good step to sort of greening the area up as well. But it'd be interesting to watch, and I'm sure it's going to certainly revitalise the whole area, which hopefully will be good. Yeah, hopefully.
And equally you can get there by the train, can't you? Because it's
good links.
It's the end of the line, as they say.
It is, and just off the M6, isn't it? So it's nice and accessible.
Nice and easy to get to. So maybe we'll go and have a look at that in the next few years.
Indeed, something to look forward to.
And the Peat-Free campaign carries on gaining momentum, doesn't it?
It does, the Garden News magazine, they're highlighting that there's a lot of people getting behind it. Something like the National Trust, good old Alan Titchmarsh is pushing it forward. Basically, they suggested that forget 2024, we should be going peat-free now.
Okay.
Which is interesting in view of the fact that us retailers are in a bit of a rock and a hard place. We've got a nice range of peat-free products on the shelves, but the process of getting us totally peat-free is going to take a little while, as the article suggests. Easier said than done, because of course we want to make sure the products we're selling are workable and are sustainable, and of course work for the gardener.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? And ultimately, I understand you're doing your own trial at the moment, Chris, and I'm really looking forward to hearing how that gets on next month. And because you're trialing, which products are you trialing?
Yeah, so I've got about 3. I'm using the Dalefoot wool compost, which
Because that's wool and bracken, isn't it?
Yeah, and a bit of seaweed extract thrown in there.
Wow, that should be a good one.
Indeed. I'm using the New Horizon.
That's the Westland product, isn't it?
Yeah. And I picked up a bag of one from one of the DIY stores, Homebase. They were promoting their peat-free compost, which again looked quite good. They had a nice sort of sample of it on the side there, and it felt good. It's one of those things, get your hands in. So I've got those 3. So I've done some sowing. So hopefully next month we can report back and see what germinated well and how the actual management, the actual watering and looking after that compost has taken. Because that's the thing with peat-free; they are different animals in the nicest possible way.
I think that's it, and certainly the feedback I've heard is that watering potentially needs to be done a lot more frequently because the products aren't holding water as the peat-based ones do. So obviously, like you say, it's just a case of hopefully we can learn to grow things, but it might be a little bit more labour-intensive. Might need a bit more food to keep the plants sort of sustained in their new media, but that's life, isn't it?
But I think what the article is saying, and what we are sort of saying certainly to our customers, is you've got to go that way. With the whole gardening trade has to move that way, but take it in tentative steps. Somebody described going completely peat free. It's almost like making your place sort of totally vegetarian. You take everything off the menu. And in a way that can isolate people, can't it? It can make people feel a bit uncomfortable. So, grab a bag if you're doing your normal planting, give it a go and try and let us know on Dig It. Send us some comments if you find you've had good experiences or bad experiences. We'd love to.
Be really helpful, because we'll share those with everyone, and then hopefully we can all learn a little bit about the new way of growing things.
Indeed.
In peat-free.
We're getting used to new ways these days, aren't we? So this is only just another way of sort of limiting our knowledge, but also expanding our experiences.
That's it. And thinking of new plants, I saw in the house plant area this week a brand new plant that's just come in, hasn't it, Chris?
Yes.
I'd not heard of it before. But
Indeed, I've got some details actually. Dionaea leafimuntia.
Okay, and that's the vegan Venus flytrap.
That's right. It's a vegan carnivorous plant. So very new. I think it's limited availability. So you're going to have to
come in soon if you want one.
You need to sort of grab it, sooner rather than later.
1st of April, I hear, is a good day to get it.
It is indeed, and the great virtue, of course, is it's less fussy with its requirements. So
it just lives off leaves. A vegan plant, fantastic.
Looking forward to growing it.
So what's on this month then, Chris?
Yes, well, we're obviously heading to a busy time in the gardening world, but the 4th to the 10th of April, we've got Community Garden Week, which is an opportunity for communities and school gardens to share their experiences. It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously we're hearing so much more about community work as far as creating gardens, certainly over the last few years, maybe. We're going to find out more, and obviously schools now are part of that involvement with their programmes of including a bit of horticulture into their national curriculum. They're all obviously being encouraged to do that, and it's good news to see that. So that's encouraging, and certainly at the Garden Centre here we're trying to get more involved with local schools, which is
because you're good. Off to Winslow, is it next week?
I've got Buckingham Primary School, and then hopefully in the next few weeks we're going to Winslow School as well. So see what they're doing there, and obviously give them some information, advice, and try and nurture the next generation as we can.
Well, I always remember as a child growing cress, and such an easy one to grow, and so fantastic on your sandwiches.
Definitely. And still grow it today, Peter. Still like to grow it. Yeah.
It's certainly but equally, I don't know what I've done recently. I tried to grow some cress with Freya not that long ago, and I got 0% germination last time.
Okay, right.
So I think I might need to go back to school and do some more training on how to grow cress.
Right. Good stuff.
And master classes at the Garden Centre. What are we doing this month?
Yeah, so through we're changing the format slightly, Peter. So instead of just doing the Wednesday one at 4, we're doing one on a Saturday. It's on the 16th, which is going to be in the afternoon. So I'm here on that weekend. So we'll be doing container gardening. So it's creative pots and baskets. So actually, it's a talk where I don't rely on PowerPoint and slides. I actually get my hands dirty, which is
brilliant.
Yeah, so we'll talk about container gardening. We'll talk about sort of lasagna planting for summer displays, and we also obviously look at the hanging baskets, the thrillers, the spillers, and the fillers to give your hanging baskets that little bit of wow for this summer. So that's I'm looking forward to doing that one. That's
brilliant. Yeah, nice. I love hanging baskets. I mean, I know when I went to Pershore and they sort of showed you various different ways of doing them and how many plants you need, but ultimately they're fairly easy to plant up, and from my experience, as long as you water them and remember to water them at least 2-3 times a week, shall I say?
Oh yes, maybe more,
preferably every day, but sometimes life doesn't allow for it. But you can get just like the trailing lobelia hanging out. You can do such simple hanging baskets with maybe just 2 or 3 varieties of planting, or you can do the full-on masterpiece, which goes on for months and months and looks amazing all the time.
Indeed, and I might obviously reference the fact it is the good old, the Platinum Jubilee, so you might want to do something very patriotic, a bit of red, white and blue maybe. Might get away with that this year without seeming to be... I think at the end of the day, hanging baskets containers are very much about you, the person, so you can get as creative as you like, and that's the fun of doing them, I think.
Definitely. And obviously Easter weekend coming up. We're shut on Easter Sunday, aren't we? But open around, obviously historically, Garden Centre's mad weekend, isn't it? It
is,
real good one to get out, and hopefully the weather will be nice and warm.
Indeed.
And we might be able to be barbecuing as well.
Indeed, yes, barbecuing. And remember, Good Friday, traditionally, you look in all the old gardening books, they always say, get your main crop potatoes in. So it's the day if you want to literally follow the gardener's almanac.
The gardener's Bible,
yes, you need to do that. But no, it's a good time. And with the season as it's been, obviously this last month, I'm sure we're going to be into a good sort of planting season. And I always say as well, if you're going to be doing gardening over that Easter weekend, come to the Garden Centre, get all what you need, so you're prepared to use that Sunday to the full. Because if the weather's good, you can enjoy obviously a barbecue, enjoy the outdoors, and get your gardening tasks done in a nice, relaxed way.
That's it. And one of my favourite vegetables, but I know it's a bit of a love it or hate it type vegetable, is asparagus. And it's National Asparagus Day on 23rd of April, isn't it?
It is, yes. And I think we're quite lucky, obviously being in North Buckinghamshire for growing it. But obviously you have to go really, do we have to go further afield, Peter, for it? Yeah.
Well, we've got Newton Purcell, which is just down the road, and Westbury, to my knowledge, are our most local asparagus farms, and I think historically Newton Purcell they used to supply us here at the Garden Centre with fresh asparagus, and it's not the quickest and easiest plant to grow, is it, Chris? It takes a couple of years.
I'd say it takes a couple of years. It takes a bit of commitment as well for space, because it's quite a demanding crop for the amount of space you need to do it. And creating asparagus beds, you're going to have to dig the soil well. You're going to have to make sure all your perennial weeds are removed, and then obviously you need to buy yourself some decent asparagus crowns, which, at the moment in the shop we sell asparagus crowns, a number of varieties from Taylor's bulbs, so you can start those off. Yep. They're usually 1 year old, and sometimes we get them as plants as well, depending on the season. But you're looking at probably 2 to 3 years before you start cutting your first spikes, or sprouts. Is it a sprout or
shoots? Wouldn't they be a shoot?
Asparagus shoots, yes, of course, yes. Get the term right.
And the soil, I can remember my parents grew some Pacific purple, which I seem to remember we made a raised bed for them. And now, am I right in saying they like a nice sort of light sandy soil, but
perfect,
with
yes,
a fair bit of nutrients in it, so we had to sort of prepare the soil well. And certainly 3-4 years later, I think we used to get maybe, I would say, 2 or 3 meals off half a dozen plants.
That sounds about right, Peter.
They're quite intensive, as you say.
And of course, you need to get nutrients on them. And they often recommend sort of mulching the soil really well, so putting a nice organic layer, which then will feed the soil. The other thing, of course, is when the asparagus has been cropped, you get this amazing amount of plumage foliage.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It is fantastic foliage, actually, and of course it has lovely sort of autumn colour as well. So actually in the garden, if you were clever with your planting where your asparagus bed is, it can make quite a nice feature for later on in the summer. But it is quite demanding, but it's worth it. And of course, the cost of asparagus. And it's one of those things these days we tend to get so much out of season, isn't it? Something which is obviously imported, which is a little bit of a shame, because I think if you buy obviously locally sourced, it's going to taste so much better and the flavour.
Less air miles.
Indeed, for all the right reasons.
Better for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's it.
And cooked well, maybe not cooked too well. You usually get some nice. Yes, I think we all know that the situation, certainly in the household of the days, we tend to overcook. I think asparagus, that's probably our downfall. So lightly steam.
Yeah, steamed or stir fry. I love that it's chopped up in a stir fry. I mean, or as a roast, as a vegetable with a roast, it's always
lovely.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And this month's top 5, what are we doing? Summer bulbs, Chris?
Summer bulbs, yes. So
interesting, isn't it? I was quite surprised by this list. And what breaks it at number 5?
So Cascading Begonia pink.
Okay, number 4.
Cascade Begonia orange.
Number 3.
Cascade Begonia red.
We've got a Cascade. Is it for number 2?
It is. It's the yellow for number 2. However, we do have a number 1, which isn't a begonia.
And what's that?
Agapanthus Blue.
Brilliant. Excellent.
So quite a different sort of what you'd expect at this time of year. In view of the fact we're selling things like lilies and such like, but obviously we're selling volume.
Yeah, masses and masses of begonias out. And they're such a wonderful sort of plant, aren't they? I like them in a hanging basket where you've got, I mean, they give you a bit of height. They sort of...
And the pendulous habit of them, and the fact you're looking up into the flowers is really good. And I love the sort of tissue paper quality of begonias. They look so fragile, but actually they're quite robust as training plants, which obviously these are. But in a way, it puts a smile on my face, because if this is a new sort of trend, we're seeing that people are getting connected to begonias again, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah, because they were really, I'm going to say, popular in the 60s, and they're sort of one of the original bedding plants, if I could say that. And I mean, the nice foliage colour and the flowers go on, and they're a really good plant to grow. And how about sort of division? Do you have to buy them new each year, Chris, or can you sort of keep them going? And
yes. So what you do normally, you start your tubers off now, and when you look at a begonia tuber, it's got a sort of a concave bit, sort of the concave bit and the convex bit at the bottom. So make sure the concave bit is pointing upwards, and just slightly bury them so they're just so you can see into the sort of. If I do the analogy of the volcano of the plant, and then keep the compost nice and moist, and you'll find within literally a few weeks that the plants start to then produce some roots. You start to see little shoots, and at that stage, you can then, if the shoots are forming across the top of the plateau of the tuber, you can actually then cut the tuber in half, assuming it's a good size, of course. So, I mean, our size tubers we're selling are good size, so you could possibly divide them for year 1, maybe wait until year 2 or 3, and you just use a nice sharp knife, cut down so you make sure you've got shoots on either side of the tuber. Leave them for 24 hours, maybe 48 hours to callus over, and then plant them back into nice compost again, peat-free, and off you go.
So we're looking for a tuber maybe, 2-3 inches?
I'd say,
sort of round, or maybe 3 or 4?
3 inches minimum, I'd say. That would be good. But you will find, as I found the other day when I was in my greenhouse, they do become quite large in time. After about 3 years, they'll get over to something 4 to 5 inches across.
Yes, and almost a side plate sort of size.
Yes.
And can you divide that into maybe 3 split it 3 ways, or would you only ever half it?
I personally just probably half it, yes.
Okay,
yeah, I
brilliant.
think that's a good way of doing it. And of course, with most tuberous begonias, they can be a bit slow to get going, but once the momentum sort of picks up, they are greedy plants. They need lots of feed. So good old Tomarite, that's what I tend to use on mine in my containers, and they flourish. And of course, if you're growing the upright ones, which of course our top 10 doesn't include, but I know we do sell some of the upright varieties, make sure they're well staked, because those stems can get quite brittle.
Right.
So in that case, if you're in a sort of windy garden, grow the Cascade varieties, because they're going to be a lot easier to manage, and you can enjoy those flowers right through to the first frost. So you need to be bringing them in around about the end of October before they get frosted badly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. And jobs in the garden. Now, Chris, you're going to be amazed here. I've had the rotavator out and I've been down the allotment. And
wow. Okay.
Before the start of April, I've even rotavated all my allotments. So
that's good news.
I'm quite proud this year.
And the weather's been good for it, hasn't it?
It's been, I mean, like we were saying earlier, it's been very dry, so the soil's very workable at the moment, or certainly it was back in March. And interesting that, obviously, historically, we would be planting potatoes, I would say sort of April time. You referenced the fact that Easter weekend is the time for your main crop, and this year I sort of see the daffodils have been out now for a few weeks.
Yes, my tulips have been our own flower. I've never had tulips in flower at the very end of March. It's always been April, obviously May. Traditionally, tulips are May, even into early June. So
yeah, you think they're the sort of start of summer, the tulips all come out, but this year they certainly seem very early, don't they?
Yeah, which goes to show that the recent news reports, I'm sure people have read about the fact that we are at least a month early this year, is boding well. I mean, and the trouble is that has a big consequence on our bees, our wildlife out there, because suddenly food sources are there earlier, which obviously can cause a few issues of supply.
Yeah, and I suppose if they are growing that much earlier, we probably need to be thinking about feeding them as well, do we?
Feeding and maybe fleecing if Jack Frost makes a return in the not too distant future. So make sure you've got some fleece handy to keep those nice and clear.
And thinking a little bit more about fertilisers, Chris, I mean, obviously, towards the end of the month, we're planting vegetables out. What's your favourite type of sort of fertiliser to start the plants off with?
If I'm in a very organic mood, I would go down Bloodfish and Bone, to be honest with you. Good and reliable, and obviously, especially if you've got fruit trees or soft fruit, perfect. For my veg, I'd probably go for something like National Grow More, because that's balanced. 777. However, it doesn't contain the trait elements. So if you've got crops which are a bit more pernickety, I'm thinking, things like once we get our sweet corn planted out, they can be a bit pedantic about having extra iron and boron in the mix here. And then of course Vitax Q4. I know we often mention the product, but it's so good because it is pretty balanced, but it has all the
trace elements as well.
It's all the vitamins which, of course, our plants need. So, I mean, those three, if you only had to feed your garden with, 3 feeds, those 3 would do some really good results. And, of course, in view of the way prices are going, it probably might be worth stockpiling some of your fertilisers as well.
Good point there, because I've not thought about that. But then, hopefully, chicken manure, I mean, is that a more high nitrogen sort of type feed?
Yes, I think...
So not quite yet, that's more in season.
I would say once we get into into the month of May, when things are moving at quite a reasonable speed, or need that little bit of a pick me up, maybe you've got some brassicas and things which have been sitting in the soil through the spring and not putting a lot of growth on, then I would probably give them a bit of a dressing of chicken manure. Absolutely fine, and you use it carefully and wisely, absolutely no problems at all. But as I say, it puts a lot of leafy growth on, which of course we've still got frost around until the end of May.
Yeah, you've got to be a bit careful, haven't you? And I've been mowing my lawn now for the last couple of weeks, really, isn't it? I mean,
great.
Not often that you... historically, that I've ever mown my lawn back in March, but obviously picked up some really good tips from David Hedges-Gower in our podcast last month, wasn't it? About the fact that he doesn't see a problem with mowing your lawn all year round.
Indeed.
I'd never really thought about it, but yes, certainly the first cut my lawn was quite long, and you pull the height right down, and obviously where the grass had grown really well, it's quite yellow. So, do you think it's worth feeding the lawn?
Yes, I mean, that yellow, as you say, is probably the fact that light's not got quite down to it. Certainly getting some light into it now, obviously a bit of moisture. I suspect it's a combination, Peter, of dryness as much as anything as well, because we've been so dry for the last few weeks. No doubt that will change as we head through April. April showers traditionally is the best time to apply a lawn feed because you've got natural...
So it washes all the...
Yes.
I've historically used Evergreen Extra, and that's a granule, and like you say, sort of, if you've got I look at the forecast and think, it's forecast rain in a couple of days' time,
Perfect.
Bang it on, and as long as you haven't cut the lawn that day, it's generally good, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You need to watch the weather forecast really, and remember if rain isn't obliging, then obviously you can artificially irrigate with a sprinkler just for an hour or two if you can. Yep. That will be good as well. But I think it's important with lawn care that you work with the weather. I think it's like anything, isn't it? Seize the opportunity, like we've been seizing the opportunities to cut our grass more regularly, then the lawn will recover. It's the first to ever show signs of stress, and it's obviously the first thing to recover as well.
And the other thing that I picked up from David's podcast was sharpening the lawn, the lawnmower blade. I actually got my file out and gave it a little sort of file down, and
makes all the difference, doesn't it? Yeah.
We'll wait and see.
Okay.
Hopefully, yes.
Excellent.
And it must be time to start thinking about sowing some vegetables, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people have already been getting on with their lettuce and their spring onion and maybe carrots perhaps last month, but this is the month for the more tender veggies, isn't it? So your beans, your runners, French, and maybe obviously things like sweet corn and your tomato plants.
Peppers, presumably.
Yeah, peppers would be good, and aubergines, of course. Anything which really needs the warmth, and certainly growing, sowing those on in a small pot on a windowsill is usually the best way. Get them through. They'll probably germinate within 10 days. Normally, they'll be through, and try and pot them on quickly. I think with these sort of plants, you need to move them on quite quickly. Don't have them hanging around too long in the
pots, otherwise they get quite root bound.
They do, yeah. Keep moving them on, and of course, because you're moving them on, they're going to grow quite quickly as well. So, bear in mind that you've still got to, if you start sowing at the beginning of this month, middle of May, that's 6 weeks away. You've got to sort of plan to see how the plants progress there. But keep them on a windowsill; they're going to grow fine. Or if you've got a greenhouse with a bit of heat or a bit of protection through the any chilly nights ahead of this month, and they will be fine. Keep them well turned. Make sure you get nice balanced growth with windowsill propagation. That's the key.
That's a good point. Yeah. Because I was looking through the seed stands the other day, and on the Seeds of Italy stand, there's Padron peppers. Oh, you ever had Padron peppers?
I've never. No, they sound intriguing.
So, in this country, I can only ever find them in Waitrose, of all places, and it's a dish you get out in Spain, and really, they're a couple of inch long sort of green peppers.
Okay.
And you fry them up with a bit of olive oil and serve them with salt. And they're just lovely sort of nibbly things to eat. But I saw the seeds available, like I say, from Seeds of Italy. So I was thinking maybe I might try grow those this year. But peppers, are they more a tropical plant? Do I need a greenhouse or? No,
I think if you want to extend the season with your peppers, so at the end of the season, you bring them inside a conservatory. Some have plenty of light, and they will carry on growing.
Okay.
I think the hard work, in a way, is replaced by our summer. So if you get some nice strong plants through the summer, producing flowers, producing some nice fruits, then keep the continuity going by bringing them inside, probably the end of September. And give them warmth. And you should find, anecdotally, I've got a friend of ours who grows peppers right through the winter. And,
really?
And they grow really well. I mean, obviously the light levels are low, but it's frost-free conservatory, probably around about the mid-50s, early 60s, so around about sort of 16 degrees.
Yep. And
it's fine, and you will be able to crop those quite well. So I think it's what you do this summer will dictate how well the plants potentially will do in the winter. But definitely give them a go, I would say, yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Chris. And anything else we need to be thinking about at the moment, Chris?
Yes, Peter. I think certainly if you've got loads of climbers in your garden, I was looking at my clematis the other day. Actually, it's putting lots of growth on now.
Yep.
If it's a bit unwieldy, move it. Get some twine, some raffia out, and sort of tie those stems in. If you've got your climbing roses and they've been obviously trimmed back in February when we recommended that you do it, you'll find you've got lots of shoots which will need to be tied in and give the plant space as well. So. Make sure everything's nice and secure because they're going to start putting lots of growth on as they run up to flower. And then the other thing really is this month is a perfect time to move anything evergreen. So if you've got, I'm talking about evergreen plants, perhaps maybe sort of knee high, maybe a little bit taller than that, nothing huge.
Yep.
But you can move them quite safely. You'll need to take a really good planting hole out in preparation, so improve the soil really well, have that ready, and then get yourself a nice sharp spade and take out as much of the root ball you can physically carry. So it might be a two-person operation, it might be a family move, but if you've got to move things like we talked about rhododendrons, pyrus, even a small conifer might be just out of place or it might have grown too big. Get it moved now, and obviously give it lots of water when you've moved it.
Yep. Put
a little bit of nutrient in the planting hole as well. A bit of bloodfish and bone or Vitax. Give the plant a good start. You'll need to give it lots of copious amounts of watering for that transition. But generally, they will transplant so much better in April, May, or October, September, October than the rest of the year. So. Yeah, it's a good opportunity to do and get it done.
It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, you think they're putting their new roots out this time of year, so
exactly.
You cut them back, and like you say, so long as you water them, then they do well. So yeah, thinking about moving things, I can remember we moved a euonymus hedge here many years ago, and I want to say we did it early June time, but it survived. I mean, we had to water it every day to start off with, but it made a fabulous hedge, and it did really, really well. I was really pleased to see it move.
That's really good to hear. And the thing is, when you prune, you obviously use root prune as you transplant, and that stimulates the plant into growth. So it can sort of be a little bit of delayed reaction, but usually within sort of 4 to 6 months, it starts to put new growth above soil level. But obviously, it's what it does below soil level, which is important as far as the watering and feeding this summer. But give it a go. If you need to move something, do it now.
Brilliant. Okay. And our next podcast coming up in a couple of weeks' time, Chris, who have we got?
We've got Rosemary Hardy from Hardy Cottage Plants, the guru of perennials, and obviously well known to many of our listeners from her amazing displays at the Chelsea Flower Show and other RHS shows. So we'll be chatting to her all about cottage garden plants.
Yeah, because she won, is it 24 Chelsea gold medals?
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. So looking forward to that interview.
Be great, yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Peter. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.